Hey guys, we're on day 5 of Unit 10, and in our warm-up it says find the equation of a line that is a perpendicular bisector, and we just talked about this on day 4. We have to watch out for the two words, and remember that perpendicular is negative reciprocal slope, and that bisector means it has to pass through the midpoint. All right, and this is one of those 5-step questions that we were talking about. So in our first step, we're going to go ahead and find the slope between the 2 points. And remember y is to the sky, so I'm going to start with 7 minus 3, and then I'm going to do 3 for my x-coordinate minus my negative 5. 7 minus 3 is 4, and that's actually 3 plus 5, which is 8, and 4 over 8 reduces to 1 over 2. Okay. In my second step, I have to tell you the perpendicular slope, negative reciprocal. So my slope of 1/2 is positive, so my perpendicular slope has to be negative, and then I need to flip it, which is 2 over 1, which is the same thing as 2. I'm going to give that a little circle because I have to remember to use that slope and not the original. All right. After we take care of the perpendicular word, we have to take care of the bisector, which is finding the midpoint. So midpoint, what do? You add them together and divide by 2. All right, and we're going to add the x's first because that comes first in a point, including a midpoint. And so negative 5 is my x, and 3 is my x. 3 is my y, and 7 is my y. All right, negative 5 plus 3 is negative 2, and negative 2 divided by 2 is negative 1. 3 plus 7 is 10, and 10 divided by 2 is 5. And so now in step 4, I'm going to write down y equals mx plus b. And I'm going to go ahead and replace my y, m, and x with numbers. Okay? And the y is going to get replaced from the y coordinate from my midpoint, which is 5. My slope is going to get replaced with my slope, that's the perpendicular, which is negative 2. And then my x is going to get replaced from the x with the midpoint, which is negative 1. And then plus b. We'll do a little math. We're going to have 5 equals. Negative 2 times negative 1 is 2 plus b. We're going to subtract 2. And we're going to end up with a b equal to 3. And now we have the two things I need in order to write the equation of my line. So in our step 5, we're going to have y equals our slope, which is negative 2, followed by x plus 3. And there's the equation of the perpendicular bisector. Okay, it's perpendicular because it has the negative reciprocal slope of the original from step 2. And it's a bisector because it passes through the midpoint, which we inserted into step 4 to find the y-intercept. All right, so hopefully that makes sense. All right, guys, we're going to do something called finding distance today. And there's 2 ways to find distance. Okay? In this first one, this is something we're familiar with. We're going to graph a right triangle whose hypotenuse has endpoints of negative 2, 0, and 0, negative 4. Okay? When we connect these 2 lines, we're going to make that the line that is the hypotenuse of a right triangle. So in order to get a right triangle, I'm going to go straight down and straight over. So you can see the bottom of my right triangle has a length of 2, and this leg of my right triangle has a length of 4. And my hypotenuse is the length of the line segment between the 2 points that I plotted. All right. And in order to find the third side of a right triangle, we can use a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So we got 2 squared plus 4 squared equals my hypotenuse squared. 2 squared is 4. 4 squared is 16. 4 and 16 make 20. And in order to get the square off the c, we're going to square root. And the square root of 20 is not perfect, but we could reduce it if we wanted to. The largest perfect that goes into 20 is 4, and the other number is 5. And the square root of 4 becomes 2, square root of 5. And there is the length of this, what used to be an unknown side. So this line segment right here has a length of 2 square root of 5. All right, which is a little bit more than 4, less than 5, right? If you think about the square root of 25 is 5. Square root of 16 is 4. So square root of 20 is right in between there, okay? Which makes it the largest side of that right triangle. So that is one way you can find distance, okay? But we are going to use this formula called the distance formula in order to find distance from here on out, all right? But if you ever forget it, you can always revert back to the Pythagorean theorem. But this formula is nice, okay? You can find distance without a graph. Okay, in the one above, we had to use a graph in order to plot our points, make a right triangle, and then use the Pythagorean theorem. So formulas are supposed to be little shortcuts, and so this is a shortcut because we don't have to graph it. We can just plug in our values and keep going. All right, so in this distance formula, just to break it down, it's a big square root. Okay, it's got a set of parentheses squared plus a set of parentheses squared. Okay, and inside the parentheses is subtraction. Okay, and in the first one, we subtract our x's, and in the second one, we subtract our y's. All right, so I feel like sometimes this formula looks like a little bit of a face. If you guys can see this being a little bit of a face, a plus sign, nose, eyes. We can add a smile so you guys can see it. All right, so I don't know if the picture will help you remember the formula a little bit more. Okay, big square root minus the plus, the minus. Okay, you got these squareds in there. Those are important as well. All right, so use it if you think it's helpful. All right, guys, and number one, it says find the length of the line segment. So because they said length, remember, guys, length is the same thing as distance. Also remember that distance must always come out positive, all right? If your distance ever comes out negative, we got a problem. All right, so find the length or the distance of the line segment joining the points -2, 0, and 0, -4 in simplest radical form. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get the structure of our formula first. So it's a big, long square root sign. Technically, it's D equals D for distance. And I always get the structure of the formula first on my paper before I plug anything in, just like I do for midpoint. Okay, and then we're going to go ahead and remember that x's come first. And so it's -2 and 0. And that the y's come secondly, which is 0 and -4. All right, and then we're just going to go ahead and clean this up. Okay, so we're going to keep the big long square root. We don't use that until the end. And right here, -2 minus 0 is -2, and -2 squared is 4. We're going to keep the plus sign. In this set of parentheses, 0 minus a -4 is really 0 plus 4, which is 4, and 4 squared is 16. We're going to go ahead and add those two numbers together first. So we haven't used the square root, so it's still there, and 4 plus 16 is 20. And because they said simplest radical form, and we actually already simplified this. In fact, it's the same coordinates that we were finding the distance of, or between, and that's why we ended up with the same answer from up above. So just to show you that there are two ways, but we didn't have to graph or make a right triangle out of it. All right, so it's a little bit simpler. Okay. But it takes a little bit of work on our part to remember the formula. Okay, so we'll try another one. And in number 2, guys, we have the point 3, -2 is on a circle whose center's at 7, 1, and they want you to find the length of the radius of the circle. So I'm going to give you a little visual first. So it says the point 3, -2 is on a circle. So let's say pick a point on a circle and call it 3, -2. The center of the circle, which is right here, has coordinates of 7, 1. They want you to find the length of that radius. So because they're saying length is the same thing as distance. So they want you to find the distance between those 2 points. So we're going to go ahead and say D equals big long square root, parentheses squared, plus parentheses squared, minuses in between. Okay, and now we're going to go ahead and take our x coordinates because they come first, which is 3 and 7. And then our y coordinates will come second, which is -2 and 1. All right, and now we're just going to go ahead and clean it up. So right here, 3 minus 7 is -4, and -4 squared is 16. Okay, keep in mind, anytime you take a number and you square it, it will always come out positive. Okay, if you have a positive number squared, it's going to be a +4. If you have a negative number squared, it will also be a +4. So be careful. All right, if you don't use parentheses in your calculator when you square numbers, they could come out negative, which is wrong. All right. In the second set, -2 minus 1 is -3, and -3 squared is +9. All right. So these numbers in here should always be positive after you square them. Okay. All right, guys, we're going to add them together. 16 plus 9 is 25. And the square root of 25 is actually perfect. The square root of 25 just gives me 5. And there is the length of my radius. All right. I'll see you guys on the back side of notes for a couple more examples.